Have you ever noticed how certain people seem oddly disturbed by the presence of someone who radiates light? Not because of anything said or done, but simply because of who that person is. There's a mystery hidden in plain sight, a quiet truth woven into the very fabric of human relationships. It's not governed by logic. It defies explanation by reason. It emerges instead from the deeper, often darker, recesses of the psyche. There exists a strange, almost paradoxical law that governs how we relate to one another. You may have felt it yourself, an invisible tension you couldn't quite name. It's the magnetic pull between the radiance of an open heart and the silent resentment of those who feel uneasy in its glow. Why does the one who nurtures, the one who listens deeply, who enters a room with calm presence, often encounter resistance rather than warmth? Why is it that the soul who gives without asking, who sees with unguarded perception, seems to draw in those who are unsettled, perhaps even threatened, by such sincerity? And why is the one most capable of healing often the one most misunderstood, quietly envied, even resented? This isn't random. It isn't merely a twist of fate. What we're witnessing is an unconscious truth, a kind of psychic chemistry at play, an ancient dance between what is whole and what is wounded. Empathy, you see, is not simply a personality trait. It's far more profound than that. It is in many ways a direct expression of what Jung might call the self, the totality of both the conscious and unconscious psyche. When someone is truly empathic, they don't just feel for others. They become a vessel, a conduit. Through them, the collective unconscious finds expression. Such a person does not shine because they try to. They shine because they cannot help but do so. Their very openness, their vulnerability, creates a field, a kind of emotional resonance that others sense, though they may lack the words to describe it. But where there is light, the shadow follows, always. You may have sensed it yourself. You walk into a room and something shifts. The atmosphere thickens, not with hostility, but with tension. Some people are instinctively drawn to you, as if toward a flame that offers both comfort and awe. Yet others react differently, subtly. They smile, yes, but the smile doesn't reach their eyes. Their energy contracts. Their words are kind, yet their tone betrays a quiet discomfort. Why? What is this invisible resistance? What causes people to harbor silent resentment towards someone who has done nothing but exist authentically? The answer lies in what Jung referred to as the shadow, that unconscious container of all the parts of ourselves we do not wish to see. Each of us carries one. But when someone encounters an empath, they aren't just seeing a kind person. They are faced with a mirror, one that reflects both their longing for wholeness and the uncomfortable truth of their own fragmentation. Your light, your sincerity, your inner alignment, it exposes what others have buried. The envy isn't about you. The resentment is not personal. It's what your presence awakens in them, the pain, the longing, the parts of themselves they've disowned. You didn't mean to trigger anything, and yet by being yourself, you did. Because in the presence of light, shadow cannot help but sharpen. And so, as you move forward in your journey, remember this: some are drawn to the flame, and others fear being burned by it. The longing for wholeness and the fear of their own suppressed darkness. I've often said that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. And nowhere is this transformation more mysterious or more profound than in the presence of an empath. The empath transforms others simply by being. No words are needed, no actions required. Yet this transformation isn't always welcomed, especially by those who are not yet prepared to face the hidden truths within themselves. For them, your light doesn't feel healing. It feels like a silent accusation. They may shrink in your presence, not because you diminish them, but because your very authenticity makes the mask they wear feel heavier. Your honesty, your integrity, your vulnerability, It reflects what they have denied in themselves. It's as though a voice inside them whispers, "You are not living your truth." But rather than face that unsettling whisper, they turn it outward. They project their unease onto you. You become the object of discomfort, even resentment, not for what you do, but for who you are. Vulnerable, awake, real. Beneath this surface reaction lies a deeper psychological mechanism, one both fascinating and at times dangerous. The empath often embodies the archetype of the wounded healer. You feel deeply not because life has spared you pain, but precisely because it hasn't. Your depth was forged in the crucible of your own suffering. Your light is not a product of ignorance. It is born of survival, of facing darkness and returning with something intact, something whole. Others can sense this. Even if they cannot put it into words, they feel that you carry a kind of knowing, a lived understanding of suffering, of transformation, of inner rebirth. But instead of approaching that wisdom with humility, many will try to siphon your energy. Some, more subtly, will attempt to dim your brightness. Herein lies the paradox. The very gift that enables you to elevate others is the same gift that attracts those who seek to drain it. Think of the sun. It offers warmth, energy, clarity, but not everyone welcomes sunlight. For some, it is too intense, too revealing. It strips away illusion. And in that way, your presence as an empath does the same. You don't try to expose others, yet your energy feels exposing to those still hiding behind defenses. They may accuse you of being too sensitive, too emotional, or too intense. But what they really mean is that your sensitivity lays bare what they've buried. And so resentment takes root, not loudly, but silently. They are pulled toward your light, yet simultaneously repelled by what it reveals. It's like standing beside a fire on a cold night, craving its warmth but flinching at its glow, wanting to be near it but not wanting to be seen. This very dynamic is something I've often observed in the language of dreams. The unconscious reveals truths that the waking mind cannot say. A dream may present a luminous child, pure, radiant, uncorrupted, and yet this figure is rarely alone. It is often paired with a shadow presence. The jealous sibling, the dark twin, the cunning trickster, a symbol of resistance, a force that seeks to extinguish what it cannot yet embrace. This timeless pattern plays out not just in myth or dreams, but in your everyday life. You may find yourself in relationships that drain you, that misunderstand you, that quietly sabotage your joy or clarity. And still you wonder, am I too much, too open, too real? The answer is no. You are not wrong. You are simply a living embodiment of the luminous archetype. And wherever such light exists, the shadow inevitably rises to meet it. And wherever such light exists, the shadow rises to meet it. I invite you to reflect, not just casually, but deeply, on something subtle, yet profoundly revealing. Have you ever noticed how certain people become inexplicably irritated by your kindness? It's not what you say. It's not even what you do. It's simply who you are. Your presence, your sincerity, your warmth. To them, your generosity feels like a silent judgment, as if your ability to care is an unspoken reminder of something they lack. This isn't about you. This is projection. They are seeing in you the very qualities they've silenced within themselves. Maybe they struggle to feel deeply. Maybe they've grown used to hiding behind pretense, unable or unwilling to live from a place of emotional truth. And so, rather than sit with that discomfort, they cast it outward. You become too much, too emotional, too intense, too earnest. But the truth, they're not really rejecting you. They are rejecting the mirror you unknowingly hold up to their soul. To live as an empath is to walk a razor's edge, between light and shadow, between connection and rejection. You carry a rare kind of awareness, one that lets you see beyond the surface, to sense the undercurrents of feeling others don't even know they're caring. This sensitivity is your strength. It's what makes you a guide, a comfort, a lighthouse to those lost at sea. But it is also your vulnerability, because what you see, others are not always ready to confront. Some will love you for your warmth, your intuition, your ability to understand what is never said, but others will shrink from your radiance. They'll resist it, not because there's something wrong with it, but because that light touches places within them that have long remained hidden. This isn't your fault. It's simply how the unconscious mind reacts when it encounters a force that activates it. Your light brings things to the surface: old pain, suppressed emotions, unacknowledged truths. And that can be frightening. The key is not to shrink yourself, not to edit your presence to soothe the discomfort of others. Instead, it's about understanding the alchemy at play. So when you see that flicker of resentment in someone's eyes, remember, it is not a sentence passed against you. It is a reflection of their own inner war. And here's something that might surprise you. Often, the people who resent your light the most are the very ones who secretly long for it. They're drawn to you not because you threaten them, but because you awaken something they've lost. A longing for emotional depth, for truth, for authenticity. Yet instead of embracing that longing, they mask it. It shows up as jealousy, hostility, dismissiveness. That's why so many empaths find themselves in confusing relationships, romantic, familial, or professional, where they are simultaneously admired and subtly undermined. It's a painful paradox. The empath, unaware of what's really happening, begins to internalize the treatment. You start to ask, what did I do wrong? Why am I being punished for caring too much? But this has never been about what you've done. It's always been about what you are. You see, the unconscious is not governed by logic. It doesn't pause to weigh fairness or examine motives. When someone's shadow is activated, they don't stop to ask, is this resentment truly mine? Or am I projecting it? They simply feel it, strongly, unconsciously, without understanding why. And there you are, the empath, standing in the middle of it all, sensing everything, absorbing what is never said but always felt, bewildered by the tension, caught between admiration and alienation, sensing the tension that is never spoken but always present. This is the hidden cost of being attuned to the subtle layers of reality. You feel what others do not want to feel. You sense the emotional undercurrents they themselves have learned to ignore. You absorb the unspoken hostility, the quiet judgments that hide behind polite words, the half smiles that never reach the eyes, and the veiled remarks that cut more sharply than open criticism. And over time, if you're not careful, you may begin to internalize these fragments. Sometimes you even begin to believe them. You start to wonder, maybe I am too much, too intense, too emotional, too open. Maybe it would be easier if you took up less space, dimmed your light, stayed quiet, felt less. But that thought, that subtle whisper, is the very trap set by the unconscious when its patterns are not understood. Because if you shrink, you betray yourself. If you dim your light to comfort others, you sever the connection to the very core of who you are, the source of your power, your healing, your authenticity. Let us look deeper. Why is it that empaths so often attract those who secretly resent their light? In the framework of analytical psychology, relationships serve as the theater where the unconscious stages its most intense and revealing dramas. When two people come together, it is not just their conscious minds that interact. Beneath the surface, their unconscious patterns, archetypes, wounds, complexes begin to speak. They begin to dance. The empath often carries within them the archetype of the anima, or animus, the inner feminine or masculine principle, which represents emotional depth, intuition, and soulfulness. When another person encounters this archetype outside themselves, embodied in an empathic individual, they may feel instantly drawn to it. It resonates deeply because it reflects something they have lost or never fully owned, a missing piece of their soul. And yet, if they have denied or rejected that emotional, intuitive part within themselves, they will also feel a quiet, instinctive anger toward it. It's as if your presence becomes a mirror they cannot look into for too long. You challenge them, not by preaching or correcting, but simply by existing. And not everyone is prepared to meet that challenge. Not everyone is ready to face the hidden truths they've kept locked away. There's another powerful dynamic worth exploring: the archetype of the martyr. Many empaths unconsciously adopt this role, the one who suffers silently so that others may feel better. This doesn't stem from a desire to be a victim. On the contrary, it often comes from early conditioning. Perhaps you were taught, subtly or directly, that love must be earned through sacrifice, that your worth lies in how much you can give, not in who you are. Maybe you grew up in an environment where your sensitivity was both a gift and a burden. You were praised for being compassionate, but punished, openly or subtly, for feeling too much. And so, over the years, you learned to suppress your own needs, to prioritize others' emotions, to give even when it depleted you, to stay quiet even when your soul screamed for truth. This creates a powerful and painful pattern, one the unconscious recognizes and repeats. You become a vessel for others' projections. Some see you as their healer. Others use you as a container for their unresolved pain. They admire you for your warmth, yet they also offload their shadows onto you. They resent your light because it highlights their own darkness. And yet, they depend on you to soothe that very darkness. This is the double bind many empaths find themselves trapped in: praised and punished, loved and resented, needed and misunderstood, all at once. Imagine a dream. You are standing alone in a dark room, holding a small candle. Around you, figures begin to gather. Some reach toward you, hands open, desperate for warmth. Others lurk in the shadows, trying to snuff out the flame. You feel their eyes on you, some hopeful, some hostile. You are the bearer of light, and the light is both a gift and a threat. Some reaching out to you for warmth, others trying to snuff out your flame. This is not just a dream, it is a symbol of your life's journey. The candle you carry is more than a flickering flame. It represents your empathy, your inner light, your capacity to see beyond appearances and into the deeper truth of things. The figures that surround you in this symbolic dream are the people you meet throughout life. Some are drawn to your light, seeing it as a source of warmth and hope. Others view it with suspicion or fear, perceiving it as a threat to the shadows they refuse to face. And you, the dreamer, the bearer of light, must make a choice. Will you guard that flame, protecting its brilliance from the winds of resentment? Or will you allow it to flicker and fade beneath the weight of others' projections? This is not just a philosophical question. It is one that life continually places before the empath, again and again. The answer does not lie in hardening yourself. It is not about becoming colder, tougher, or emotionally detached. That would only turn you into someone you are not. The real path lies in becoming more conscious, learning how to hold the candle without being consumed by the shadows it illuminates. To carry your empathy with awareness, not as a burden, but as a gift. And most of all, you must understand, the resentment you encounter is not personal, it is archetypal. It belongs to something much older than any one person. It is part of a timeless pattern that has played out for centuries. Look around you, at history, mythology, and religion. This story has been told before. The bringers of light have always been misunderstood. They have been envied, ridiculed, and even persecuted. Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods to give to humanity, was condemned to eternal torment for his defiance. Christ, the embodiment of compassion and divine truth, was crucified by those whose hearts could not tolerate the intensity of his light. The prophet, the healer, the visionary, these figures have always lived at the threshold between adoration and alienation. Perhaps your own life doesn't carry such monumental weight, and yet the principle is no different. When you embody light, you reveal darkness. And not everyone welcomes that revelation. Some resist it, some react with fear, anger, or rejection, not because of you, but because of what you unknowingly awaken in them. I do not share this to frighten you, but to awaken you. Because once an empath truly understands this dynamic, something powerful shifts. You stop taking the resentment personally. You begin to see it for what it is: a signpost, a signal that your presence has stirred something buried in the unconscious of another. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" you begin to ask, "What is this reaction showing me about them?" And perhaps even about myself. Yes, even as an empath, you carry your own shadow. There may be moments, fleeting, unspoken, where you feel inwardly superior in your sensitivity, as if your ability to feel deeply makes you purer, wiser, more evolved than those around you. This is a subtle trap, an unconscious form of spiritual pride. Others can sense it, even if you don't voice it, and they may resent you for it. The antidote is humility, the kind that grounds you, the kind that allows you to hold your light not as a weapon, not as a badge of honor, but simply as a natural expression of who you are. Your light doesn't need to be announced. It simply needs to be lived. Now let us turn inward. Why do you, as an empath, continually attract these challenging dynamics? Why do those in pain, in chaos, in resistance, seem drawn to you like a magnet? It is not only because of what you are, it is also because of what you believe. Deep down, many empaths carry an unconscious belief that they must fix others, that they are responsible for healing the world's wounds, for carrying the pain of those who refuse to carry their own. This belief may seem noble, even selfless, but it becomes a heavy burden, and it becomes a beacon for those unwilling to take responsibility for their own healing. They sense, often without realizing it, that you will carry their pain, that you will absorb their chaos, hold their wounds, and ask for nothing in return. And while this may look like compassion on the surface, in truth, it is not real empathy. Drawn to you like moths to a flame, sensing that you will carry their burdens, absorb their pain, and ask for nothing in return. But this is not true empathy. This is self-erasure. True empathy does not require you to sacrifice your essence. It does not demand that you dissolve into others' needs. Instead, it calls you to witness, to feel, and to understand, without abandoning yourself in the process. The moment you confuse your inner light with an obligation to heal everyone around you, you fall into a dangerous trap. You begin to enter relationships where resentment festers, not just theirs, but your own. That subtle, silent bitterness builds when you give too much, too often, without care or balance. There is an image that often returns to me when I reflect on this dynamic. It is the image of a garden. The empath is like a lush garden, full of color and fragrance, a sanctuary of nourishment, beauty, and peace. Some wander into this garden in awe, grateful for what it offers. Others come only to take, to pick its flowers without thought. And some, tragically, arrive with envy in their hearts and trample its beauty beneath careless feet. But here's the truth. While the garden may not choose who passes by, it can choose how it is tended. You must learn to tend to your own inner garden with care. You must plant boundaries, not as walls to keep the world out, but as living fences that protect your sacred space. Boundaries are not selfish. They are acts of self-respect. Without them, your light will not be stolen. It will be given away piece by piece until only a shadow remains. Not because others took it by force, but because you handed it over without discernment. Now let us make this real. Think back. Recall a moment when someone's resentment pierced you like a blade. Maybe they mocked your sensitivity. Maybe they dismissed your feelings or tried to make you feel small for simply being who you are. What did you do in that moment? Did you retreat? Did you apologize for your depth, for your honesty? Or did you stay rooted, silent but strong, knowing deep down that their discomfort had more to do with them than with you? This is the ongoing test for the empath: to remain open without becoming exposed, to stand in your truth without closing your heart, to witness the shadow without being devoured by it. Because while the shadow of others is not your enemy, it is also not your burden to carry. Your purpose is not to make everyone comfortable. And if your light unsettles someone, That is their path to walk. You are not here to shrink yourself in the name of harmony. In fact, your presence alone might serve as the exact spark they need, whether or not they realize it in the moment. Awakening is not always loud. Often it begins with quiet discomfort, and you may never know the outcome. The unconscious moves in mysterious ways. It unfolds slowly, sometimes over years, even decades. What you awaken in others might only bloom long after you've left their lives. You may never fully see how your light has shifted someone's world, but trust it does. Still, there is a kind of loneliness that often follows the empath's path, a profound, aching solitude. It is the loneliness of being seen, but not fully understood, of being cherished for your light, but rarely for your vulnerability. People gravitate toward your warmth, your calming presence, your wisdom. But how often do they ask, who holds you when you break? Who sees you when you're tired? You, with your open heart and healing energy, may find yourself surrounded by people who take and take, without ever realizing the well they drink from is not bottomless. And in the silence, when the noise dies down, you may ask yourself, why do I feel so empty? Why does my giving sometimes deepen my isolation instead of creating connection? This too is a manifestation of the hidden resentment. I speak of those who resent your light, those who, often unconsciously, attempt to take it from you, believing that if they can somehow possess what you radiate, they too will feel whole. But wholeness is not something that can be borrowed or stolen. It is not a garment one can drape over themselves temporarily. It is something deeply personal, something that must be discovered and cultivated within the self. The psyche of those who resent your light is often tormented by what can only be described as the shadow ideal. This shadow ideal is the internalized version of what they long to be: kind, compassionate, emotionally free, but have long rejected or buried deep within. So when they witness you living in alignment with that very authenticity, with that raw and unfiltered presence, it stirs something within them. But instead of saying, "Teach me how to live so openly," they react with inner fury. "How dare you live so freely when I cannot?" It's a strange, paradoxical form of envy, a quiet torment born from knowing they exist behind self-imposed walls of fear, while you, despite your own wounds, dare to walk unveiled. This is precisely why the empath often becomes the unspoken target of subtle emotional manipulation. Through passive-aggressive remarks, dismissive attitudes, or rejection that pierces deeper than any overt hostility. But here's the truth you must hold on to. These reactions are not really about you. They are projections, echoes of a personal war the other person is unwilling or unready to confront. You may find yourself asking, but why me? Why do I always attract this? The answer is both incredibly simple and profoundly complex, because your light is not neutral. It has a gravity of its own. It draws people in, some with appreciation, others with need, and some with silent rage. On a subconscious level, they sense that you carry a piece of something they've lost, the connection to self, to the living archetype of wholeness. That's why I often say, to be an empath is to live as a psychological alchemist. You are constantly absorbing and transmuting the raw, unprocessed emotions of others: fear, shame, anger, sorrow, and attempting to turn them into something intelligible, something that can be understood and perhaps even healed. But there is danger in this work, especially when it is done unconsciously. If you're not vigilant, you risk absorbing what is not yours. You begin to take on others' darkness as if it were your own. You mistake their unresolved pain for a flaw in yourself. You begin to wonder if your sensitivity is a curse, if perhaps you are too much, too fragile, too emotional to navigate the world. But I want you to hold an image in your mind now: the mirror. You are a mirror to others. You reflect not only their light and beauty, but also their wounds, their fractures, the parts they hide even from themselves. And while some may be grateful for that reflection, thanking you for helping them see clearly, others will despise you for it. But here's the most important truth. The mirror is never responsible for what it reflects. This is one of the hardest and most liberating lessons an empath must learn. You cannot take responsibility for the projections others place upon you. When someone resents your light, it is not a failure of yours. It is the result of something within them being stirred, something they are not yet ready to face. This is not your burden to carry. Your task is not to fix that pain. Your role is to remain clear, to stay grounded, to polish your inner mirror so that it reflects truth with compassion, but without distortion. That clarity, that inner steadiness is your gift and your protection. Dreams often reveal this exact pattern through vivid, symbolic language. A dreamer may see themselves carrying a lantern through a dark forest. With each careful step forward, figures begin to emerge from the shadows, some silently drawn to the light, reaching toward it with open hands, while others approach with the intent to snuff it out. The dream's imagery is striking and symbolic. That lantern is not just a light, it represents the dreamer's own consciousness, the delicate yet steady flame of awareness that pierces through the dense fog of the unconscious. The shadowy figures that appear are not truly enemies. They are not villains in the classic sense, but instead unintegrated aspects of the self, fragments of the psyche that have been buried, forgotten, or denied. In waking life, these aspects rarely reveal themselves directly. More often, they are projected outward, showing up in our relationships and conflicts. So when someone resents your light, they are not truly fighting you. They are wrestling with their own inner darkness, their own unresolved pain. And in that moment, you unexpectedly become both a threat and a teacher, whether you choose to or not. For those who feel deeply, who are wired to care, there's a strong temptation to respond to this resentment by shrinking. You might think, if I dim myself, become less visible, less expressive, perhaps I won't make others uncomfortable. But that instinct, though understandable, is ultimately a betrayal of your essence. Your light was never meant to be a weapon, but neither is it meant to be hidden in shame. It is the natural radiance of a soul that has walked through its own fires, through pain, loss, and transformation, and emerged whole. Do not confuse this light with pride, and do not confuse humility with self-erasure. True humility is quiet power, to shine without demanding attention, to love without expectation, to give from the depths of your being without abandoning your core. It's the steady pulse of someone who knows who they are and offers their presence freely but not blindly. The path of the empath is rarely easy because it demands that you live within the tension of opposites, holding space for both light and shadow, for joy and sorrow, for the need to connect and the need to retreat. Yet for all its difficulty, it is also a path of immense beauty and purpose. From what I've seen in my own work, those who feel the most deeply are often the very ones called to the journey of individuation, the sacred, lifelong process of becoming whole by integrating every part of the self, not just the socially acceptable ones. And empaths are uniquely equipped for this journey. They have already learned to sense what lies beneath the surface, to listen not just to words, but to the silence behind them. They read emotion and intuition as fluently as others read books. But individuation also comes with a price. It demands boundaries. It asks you to claim your right to exist fully, unapologetically. Without those boundaries, you risk falling into a pattern, being idealized, then resented, praised, then misunderstood, giving and giving until there's nothing left of you but exhaustion. Consider for a moment the archetype of the healer that appears in myths, stories, and legends across cultures. The healer is not someone untouched by suffering, quite the opposite. The healer is almost always the one who has been deeply wounded and who has somehow managed to turn that wound into a source of wisdom. That is why your light carries such power. It is not artificial. It was forged in the fire, in those moments where you bled, where you wept in silence, where you kept going despite it all. But others don't see the fire. They don't witness the long nights, the inner battles, the countless times you doubted yourself and still stood back up. They only see the glow. And sometimes, tragically, that glow becomes a mirror they are not ready to face. It reflects not your perfection, but their own hidden potential. And that can be painful. They may resent you, not because you have everything figured out, but because your very survival shines a light on their untapped strength. It's as if, deep inside, a voice is crying, "How can you shine when I still feel lost in the dark?" This is not something you can fix. It is not a puzzle to be solved, nor a wound you are responsible for healing. It is something you must simply witness with compassion, but also with detachment, like standing at the edge of a storm, feeling the wind but knowing it is not yours to calm. This is one of the most difficult lessons for the empathic soul, to care deeply without losing yourself in the tides of someone else's struggle. I urge you to pause and gently ask yourself, what does my light represent to those who resent me? What dormant archetype within them have I awakened just by existing as I am? Could it be the wounded inner child still longing for love, the one who has never truly felt safe? Is it the shadow self, the part that despises vulnerability and clings to control? Or perhaps it is the glimpse of their hidden potential, the part they are too afraid to express, and so they attack it in you. When you begin to explore this question honestly, something important shifts. You stop taking their reactions so personally. You no longer carry the sting of their judgment as a reflection of your worth. Instead, you begin to see the deeper narrative at play, the intricate choreography of the unconscious, the dance of projections and archetypes that shapes human relationships in such invisible but powerful ways. And in that heightened awareness, you find freedom, not escape, but liberation from blame, from self-doubt, from the illusion that you are the cause of someone else's discomfort. But this path also invites you to look inward, because there is also the question of your own shadow. Yes, even the empath, the one who listens deeply, who feels endlessly, carries a shadow. Perhaps yours is the fear of appearing selfish, the silent dread of being seen as harsh or unloving. Maybe you've built your entire identity on being the one who gives, who forgives, who bends first and breaks last. Ask yourself this: do I give and give because I love, or because I'm afraid of what will happen if I stop? Will they still care for me if I'm no longer the healer, the fixer, the ever-understanding one? Often, the resentment you attract from others is simply a mirror of the resentment you've buried within yourself. Resentment for all the times you swallowed your needs, silenced your truth, crossed your own boundaries in the name of peace. That resentment becomes a quiet ache, an invisible wound. And so the journey of self-awareness becomes vital. Not only must you see the shadows in others, you must also dare to look at your own. There comes a sacred turning point in the life of every empath. A moment of awakening when you realize that your light, so freely given, so often taken, is not an endless supply to be spent without care. It is not reckless generosity. It is a sacred flame, and it must be cultivated, not drained. You begin to understand that not everyone who reaches for you deserves access to your inner world. And this boundary is not cruelty. It is wisdom. It is discernment. For far too long, you may have believed that being kind meant saying yes to everything. Every request, every emotional tug, every unspoken demand. But living that way leaves you hollow, like a vessel slowly emptied, shining brightly for others while your own source fades. Those who secretly resent your light will often take from you your time, your energy, your presence until you are dimmed. Not necessarily because they are malicious, but because they have never learned how to nurture their own inner flame. And that is not yours to fix. The true lesson for the empath is not to continue feeding that pattern. It is to stand firm, to honor the truth that your light is sacred. You were never meant to burn out in the service of others. You were meant to radiate, not for validation, not for approval, but from the center of your own being. To live in this awareness is to move beyond the unconscious pattern of savior and victim, to step out of the roles that trap so many sensitive souls. You are not here to rescue everyone. You are not here to carry the pain of the world on your back. That is not what empathy asks of you. Empathy does not mean losing yourself. It means seeing clearly, feeling deeply, and responding with discernment and wisdom. There is a vital difference between compassion and self-sacrifice. Compassion arises from wholeness, from the understanding that each soul, no matter how lost, must eventually face its own shadow. You can walk beside them, but you cannot walk their path for them. Self-sacrifice, however, often flows from wounds, old, unseen, and unresolved. It springs from the deeply ingrained belief that in order to be worthy of love, one must give endlessly, even to the point of exhaustion. The more conscious you become, the more clearly you begin to see this distinction, the difference between love given freely and love traded for validation. With this clarity, your emotional landscape shifts. You start to recognize the subtle signs. When someone's resentment is not really about you, but a mirror of their own self-hatred. When their rejection, sharp or silent, is nothing more than a projection of their unhealed wounds, cast outward because they cannot bear to face them within. And instead of shrinking, instead of dimming your light or questioning your worth, you learn to stand in stillness, neither defending nor absorbing, simply being, holding your ground like a mountain unmoved by the storm. The archetype of the empath, when fully matured, evolves into the archetype of the sage. The sage does not fear the resentment or confusion of others, for they understand that all emotions, even the uncomfortable ones, are part of the soul's alchemy. The sage knows before the shadow can be transformed, it must first resist. Before it can be integrated, it must be seen, sometimes painfully, in the light of another. You too are being called to this path of maturity, to take a courageous step beyond the need to be liked, beyond the constant desire to be understood. And when you do, the landscape around you changes. You begin to perceive the hidden beauty, even within the most difficult dynamics. That person who resents your light, they are not your enemy in a strange and paradoxical way. They are your teacher. They reveal to you the places where your boundaries need reinforcement. They show you the edges of your identity where your own self-worth might still waver. And if you dare to look more deeply, they may even reflect the shadow parts of yourself that still long for attention. It's a strange grace, one that often comes cloaked in discomfort. This echoes the myth of the hero's journey, which every empath, whether knowingly or not, is walking. The hero is always summoned to leave the safe terrain of the known, to cross into the wilderness of the soul. Along this journey, the hero meets allies, yes, but also adversaries. And often it is the adversary who offers the greatest teachings. So when you face resentment, you are not being punished. You are being initiated. You are being asked to claim your inner strength, to carry your light not as a fragile candle vulnerable to the first gust of wind, but as a torch, steady, fierce, and unshakable. This does not mean becoming cold, closed, or defensive. Rather, it means standing in your truth with quiet confidence, knowing that your worth was never meant to be measured by the way others react to you. Your light is not only for others, it is also for you. Have you ever truly considered that? So many empaths live with their attention turned outward, offering warmth, presence, and care to everyone around them. But rarely do they pause long enough to direct that same energy inward. Yet your soul, like every soul, longs for your own attention. It longs for silence, for stillness, for the sacred moments in which you sit with yourself and allow your heart to speak, not just for others, but for you. It longs for the space where you can honor your dreams, acknowledge your needs, and gently touch your fears. Not to shame them, but to hear them. Because just as others carry shadows, so do you. And within your shadow, beyond the guilt, the fear, or the longing, lie hidden treasures. Your true voice, your unclaimed power, the pieces of yourself waiting to be reclaimed. When you begin to integrate these forgotten parts, you become less vulnerable to the projections and judgments of others. Their resentment no longer defines you. You begin to see it for what it is, a symptom of their own disconnection, not a verdict on your value. And so, you no longer feel the desperate need to explain yourself, to justify your boundaries, or to fix the emotional storms that were never yours to weather. There is a recurring dream that visits many empaths, not always literally, but often in symbols. In this dream, you are carrying a vessel of light, perhaps a lantern, glowing softly as you walk through shadows. Or perhaps it is a flame, tenderly cupped between your hands, protected from the wind. This image is not just a dream, it is a reminder of your role and your responsibility, not to burn for others, but to shine from within. As you walk through a darkened hall, a narrow passage wrapped in stillness and uncertainty, figures begin to approach from the shadows. Some come with reverence, as if drawn by the quiet power of your presence. Others come with anger, resentment stirred by the very sight of your flame. Some try to extinguish your light, blowing cold winds of judgment in your direction. Others, perhaps unconsciously, reach out to take it, longing to possess what they have not yet cultivated within themselves. But the dream is not about them. It is about you, your journey, your test, your inner commitment. Will you keep walking even when the path ahead is unclear? Will you shield your flame even when the wind of misunderstanding threatens to snuff it out? Will you choose to shine, knowing that not everyone will appreciate or even comprehend your light? This is the dream of your life. Every moment, every interaction is another figure in that hallway, another lesson, another chance to hold steady, another test of your resolve, your presence, your courage. And when the sting of resentment rises like smoke in the air, pause, breathe, gently ask yourself, what is mine to carry and what is not? What belongs to me and what belongs to the stories others are still trapped in? You are not obligated to absorb the weight of projections cast by others. You are not here to shrink yourself so others feel safe. You are not responsible for making everyone comfortable with the truth of your being. In fact, the discomfort they feel may be a necessary beginning, the first tremor of awakening, the crack in the armor they've worn for so long. Your role is not to soothe that discomfort, nor to diminish yourself in order to avoid it. Your role is to remain true, to embody what it means to feel, to love, to walk without masks, even when it makes others uneasy. Yes, it may make you a target, but it also makes you a catalyst. You become someone unforgettable, not because you made them feel safe, but because you challenge them to feel it all. People remember those who stir something deeper within them, even if at first they resisted or recoiled. That is why it is essential to learn the art of energetic boundaries. This is not about building walls of isolation, but about rooting yourself in a strong, unwavering inner center. When that center is firm, you can feel deeply without drowning in emotion. You can love fully without disappearing. You can give without emptying yourself. Boundaries are not harsh barriers. They are the natural edges of your soul's garden. They say, this is where I end, and you begin. They speak without hostility. They speak with clarity. I can hold space for you, they say, but I will not carry what is not mine. When you live from this place, resentment begins to lose its grip on you. It becomes just a sound in the distance, a passing storm, perhaps thunderous, but incapable of touching the flame you protect. And so I want you to remember something vital. Your light does not need permission to exist. It does not need to be defended, explained, or watered down to fit someone else's comfort zone. Your light is not a fluke. It is the result of your journey, the consequence of every shadow faced, every wound tended, every silent battle endured. Those who resent your glow are, in some unconscious way, acknowledging its strength, even if they cannot say it, even if they mask it in contempt. Let their reactions be what they are, reflections of their own path, their own lessons, their own timing. Your task? It is beautifully simple, though not always easy, to keep walking, to keep becoming, to keep deepening into the unfolding mystery of who you are, to walk forward not as someone seeking approval, but as someone grounded in truth. In the end, the reason empaths often attract those who secretly resent their light is not because the empath is flawed or broken. It is because the empath stands as a living reminder of what is possible, of what the human spirit looks like when it embraces authenticity, vulnerability, and wholeness. These are rare and radiant qualities in a world addicted to performance, praise, and perfection. And so your light will be both a balm and a mirror. Some will love you for it, others will resist. But your task remains the same, to shine anyway. And when people see someone who dares to live without those masks, without pretense or performance, something inside them stirs. It confronts them, often unexpectedly, with a truth they may have buried. The fear of being fully seen, the fear of being real, vulnerable, whole. Some will instinctively run from that confrontation, retreating into the safety of the familiar. Others may react with hostility, their defenses rising like shields to protect fragile egos. They may lash out not because you have wronged them, but because your authenticity reveals what they've long denied in themselves. Yet still there are others, the quiet few, who are ready to awaken, ready to question the masks they wear, ready to see your light and whisper to themselves, maybe I can shine too. Maybe I don't have to hide anymore. Your presence becomes not a challenge, but an invitation, a silent permission slip for others to explore their own truth. And so I leave you with this final thought. Do not be afraid of the resentment you encounter. It is not a sign of failure. It is not proof that you are too much, too sensitive, too open. Quite the opposite. It is a clear sign that you are shining, that your essence is strong enough to disturb the slumber of the unconscious. You are awakening something deep, something powerful in the world around you. And when that world resists, as it inevitably will, let it. Let the resistance come. It is not your enemy. It is evidence that your light is seen. Your task is not to fight the darkness. It is not to convince, convert, or carry the weight of those who cannot yet understand. Your only task is to be so thoroughly, unwaveringly yourself that the darkness has no choice but to notice. To be so radiant in your truth that it illuminates even what resists it. Stand in your light. Hold your flame high. Let it flicker and dance in the wind, not hidden in fear, but lifted in quiet certainty. Walk the path of the soul with both courage and tenderness, with feet grounded in truth and a heart open to beauty. Because whether the world celebrates you or resists you, it needs what you carry, even if it cannot yet welcome your gift, even if it doesn't yet know how to receive your truth. The time will come, perhaps softly, perhaps suddenly, when even those who once resented your light will see that it was never a threat. It was always a gift, a reflection, a mirror of the radiant self they had not yet claimed. And in that moment, they may finally understand. Your light was never meant to blind them. It was meant to remind them